Welcome to the In Full Bloom podcast. I am your host, Ashley Renee. This is a space where we embrace the power of being true to who we are. We explore what it means to live in alignment with your purpose, values, and voice, because when you root yourself in authenticity, you don't just grow, you bloom. Join me as we dive into real conversations, soulful reflections, and practical tools to help you bloom from the inside out. Welcome back to another episode of the In Full Bloom podcast with me, your host, Ashley Renee. Today's episode is entitled Breaking Up with Burnout because I want to explore honestly what burnout is, where it stemmed from, how y'all feel about it, how I felt about it, and just really talk about how we can be, who we can step into, the greatness that we have, the women that we're becoming, and men, if you're listening, the women and men that we're becoming when we really step into a space that is the complete opposite of burnout, the complete opposite of being in survival mode. I want to tap into kind of like my discovery about burnout and how I am still working to overcome those periods and those cycles of burnout. So I don't know about you guys, but I feel like as a millennial living in 2025, I feel like we're God's strongest soldiers. Sometimes I'm talking to my girlfriends, I'm talking to my best friend, and I'm like, girl, how are we doing this? How are we supposed to do this? Why didn't the parents give us a handbook? Something's not right. There is no way they're living with the same intensity and the same pressure that we're feeling back in their day. There's no way. It just doesn't make sense. And it's like last night I was talking to my dad and we were talking about something and he said, in my mind, when I was raising you, everything was a lot slower. And I was like, what do you mean? And he was like, to be honest, like I can recall the first 16 years like it's nothing. It's nothing. Like it's a breeze for me to sit down and tell you year by year what happened. He was like, but now you're 32 and I don't know where the last 16 years went. And I was like, you're absolutely right. I don't either. And I remember the first 16 years of my life like a breeze. Mixed with all types of memories. But now that I think about it, I'm like, I'm in my 30s and I will never be ungrateful for the life that God has afforded me. Because it's a pretty decent one. All things considered, I've had good moments, bad moments in between, but I can honestly say that sometimes I sit here and I'm just in awe of how far I've gotten in this life and just the fact that I'm here in this space, in this moment right now, as you can see, recording this episode. I think that it is a beautiful thing, but sometimes it's like I feel like a strongest soldier and I don't really need that right now. And, all things considered, maybe it is building me up for a bigger blessing. Maybe it's just meant to tussle me up to get me to a certain strength level. I don't know in this game called life. I'm not quite sure. But saying all that to say that sometimes it feels like we are in a very, very, very difficult marathon because of the things that we're riddled with, the things that come our way, the curveballs that come, maybe work, maybe family, maybe unexpected things that show up in this lifetime. And some of those things can cause us to run into burnout. Sometimes it's our habits, it's our daily habits, it's our actions, it is how we move through life. And that compounding effect of all those things riddled with the curveballs that come through that, again, cause us to experience burnout. But I wanted to riddle with this topic because I don't know where burnout really came from. I first started hearing about burnout during the pandemic. And I want to say 2020, 2021 is when it really became a thing. It was like burnout, self-care, burnout, self-care. Everybody was talking about burnout. Everybody was talking about self-care. And while I understood both, I really had to dig deeper into myself, my daily actions, my habits, my job, my work life, all the things to really figure out what it meant for me. And as I said before, burnout for me was really that compounding effect of doing things, I believe, when you're out of alignment in some ways, and it just causes you to run on survival mode and run on empty until you realize, like, oh my God, I've hit a wall and I can't keep going in the way that I'm going. All right, so I'm going to read a little definition. The burnout definition states that it's the exhaustion of physical or emotional strength or motivation, usually as a result of prolonged stress or frustration. I'll say this. During the pandemic, before the pandemic really hit, I had toyed with the idea of network marketing. Not intentionally, and I say that because I got to a point in my career very early, I want to say 2-3 years into my nursing career, that I wanted to experience life on a deeper level. As a nurse, and my fellow nurses can attest to this, we know the hard work that goes into nursing. It may seem cute from an outside lens, but we know the ins and outs. We know what it takes to take care of another person or people, because a lot of times we have multiple patients that we see on a daily basis at any given time during the day. But we know what that means, and we know that that comes with a deeper level of just going to work, if you will. Not to put down anybody else's career or profession, but healthcare is not easy, right? And even though I knew that the work that I was doing was fulfilling, there are some days where it was very frustrating, not because of the patient per se, sometimes because of the patients. You want to give them all the care in the world, and sometimes they don't receive that as readily as you'd want them to. Sometimes it's the team that you're working with. It's just a myriad of things that goes into it. But healthcare, as much as it could have been fulfilling for me, and sometimes still very much is, I realized that at some point I was toying with the idea of doing other things outside of my career, and I couldn't understand the why. I couldn't understand why I felt like I needed something extra. And it got to the point where I was just toying with ideas. I was actually on Bumble. Oh my God. I was on Bumble, and if you've ever been on Bumble, you know that it had, I think, 3 sides to it. So it had the dating, it had the friends, and I want to say it had business. I'm not sure. And I remember going on either the friends or the business side of things because I wanted to meet people who were in a space that they kind of ventured out and ventured off and ventured into their passions. And that's really what it was for me at the time. Because I was like, there's no way that this life is just like, go to work, come home, go to work, come home, go to work, come home, be stressed out a little bit, be stressed out a lot. My feet hurt, my back hurt, go to work, come home. And as much as, yes, I would go out with my friends and I would travel multiple times for the year and do all the things, I was like, but there's something missing. Something don't feel right. And even though it was very early in my career, I would have those moments where I was burnt out. I was going to work, especially during COVID. And it was kind of like a topsy-turvy kind of moment, because when COVID first hit, everybody was just running full force to just figure the things out, figure out what kind of equipment we need to take care of these patients, how we were going to take care of these patients, what went into taking care of basically a dying patient while trying to save somebody else's life. And even though that's nursing at its core, when COVID hit, it was really a lot that went on behind the scenes. I know that the news was able to portray some of it, but sometimes I look back and I'm like, how did we survive this? And I can honestly say I don't think that I saw the worst of the worst, even though there was some very, very gloomy, for lack of a better term, times, and I don't mean to be glum on this episode, but there were days when I would go in, see one person, and go back the next day and they weren't there. And you can probably figure out what that means. And saying all that to say, There were days when I'd come home and everybody's like, oh my God, COVID, 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 COVID. It got to the point where I couldn't watch the news. I refused to watch the news because I knew what was going on behind the scenes, and I was tired of hearing the same things reiterated during what I felt like was my safe space. When I went home, I wanted that moment, that time to decompress, de-stress. I wanted to strip in my kitchen, take a shower, put on my PJs, and just chill out. I didn't want to hear about all the death tolls and this, that, and the third thing. And there were days where I was just like, this is a lot. There were days even, I think, when the first wave of COVID kind of died down, that I was like, this is still a lot. I'm still coming home because this is a lot of physical labor. And I think for a lot of nurses who especially work at the bedside, taking care of patients, when we say burnout, like I'm nodding and smiling, and this is not a video episode, so you can't see me. You might see a snippet, but you can't see me. But it's one of those things where I'm talking about it and I'm almost feeling it, reliving the moment, because I recall days where like my shoulder was so tense, or my feet were literally throbbing hours after getting home, and I'm just like, this is a lot. The work is fulfilling, but the after effects, it's a lot. And so for me, once I started hearing about burnout, I started thinking to myself, like, okay, so I'm young, I'm in my 20s, I work a decent job, I get paid pretty well, right? There's some good days, some bad days. There's some days when I'm the happiest nurse alive and I'm like, oh my God, this is great. And there's some days that I go home and I'm like, what's the point of me being a nurse if the patients don't even want the care? And that's just me telling the truth. And then there were those moments where I was like, this is not it. There has to be something more. And if you've ever gone on a purpose journey, if you have ever toyed with the idea of digging deeper into the meaning of life, digging deeper into the meaning of what you're meant to do on this earth, again, just the whole idea of purpose, I'm pretty sure you know what I'm talking about. Because after a while, I kind of just felt like, all right, like work is good, work is great, but something's missing and this ain't it. And not to say that I was living in survival mode, but as I said, it was go to work, come home, go to work, take a vacation, get vacation, come home, go to work, go out with your friends, come home. And that cycle just left me feeling like something was missing. So went on Bumble, found someone. She introduced me to network marketing. I didn't know what it was at the time, to be really honest with you. I knew of, the companies, but I didn't know the processes that they used. And even though I don't think network marketing is bad, because I don't, I just knew that what I was looking for wasn't that. It was almost like running from one burnout to the next in trying to fulfill my life's purpose. And I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to keep doing basically the same thing in a different setting. It just didn't make sense. But I think, again, burnout comes when you're not in alignment with what I truly believe is that you're called to do in this life. When you are out of alignment with what God is calling you to do. And I do think that alignment could mean a lot of different things. You could be fully in alignment and fully true to your life's purpose outside of your career, inside your career. You could do something completely different from, what it is that you studied in this lifetime. And I've seen it happen. I've seen it where both things, people will say, oh, like I was feeling burnt out on my job, yada, yada, yada. I quit and then I found my purpose. And then, I just took off and now they're multi-millionaires doing something completely different from what their degree says they do, right? I've also seen it where there are people in their careers, nurses too, who wholeheartedly are not only passionate about the work they do, but you can tell that they're fulfilled because of the way that they care for others, the way that they give into whatever aspect of nursing it is that they're in. For me, I realized a long time ago that, and I'll share a story with you. I realized a long time ago that I truly have a heart for teaching. It doesn't mean that I feel like I have to be a professor at some prestigious college. No. But I like the fact that someone can come to me and I can walk them through the steps of doing something and they can master that. It brings me joy. It makes me happy. It makes me happy to see someone grow from point A to point B. And it's not about knowing that I helped them. It's just about knowing that, they got it. Like, all right, they're good now. And learning is a process that, it's continuous. It never ends. And I always say this, I love learning. I don't always like going to school, but I love learning because there's always something that you can discover that makes a process better, that makes the outcome better. And I truly love that, right? But I think that when you're, again, operating outside of your purpose, when you're operating outside of what you're called to do in this lifetime, I think that also plays a huge part into burnout. And I say that because I discovered that mentoring others within my career was something that I love to do. When I could look at newer or younger nurses and hold their hand, for lack of better terms, but really mentor them, really speak life into them, really have them understand that, yes, no, you're not going to know all the procedures tomorrow. You just started today. But let them know, like, hey, listen, you look up to me now and you think that I'm, some boss nurse. But in actuality, I was almost failing when I first started in my career. I didn't get everything right away. I made mistakes just like anybody else did. And sometimes that's the process you have to go through to get to that state, that point, that, ideal state that you want to be at. And I think that once I figured out, oh, wow, I don't have to do the things that others are encouraging me to do. Everybody wants to go back to school to be this thing and that thing and the third thing. And people would always ask, Ash, are you going to go back to be an MP? And I'm like, no. And they're like, no, why not? And I'm like, because I'm not interested. It's not an aspect of nursing that interests me. Do I have great respect for them? 100%, because I know the work that goes on behind the scenes. I see the work that goes on behind the scenes. It's just not of interest to me. But once I figured out, wow, education is kind of like, that's kind of my jam. I kind of like that. Then I realized, okay, so now I need to make moves. Now I need to pivot. Now I need to make the steps or take the steps necessary to pivot in that area, whatever that may look like, because there's so many different things you can do with education. Once I realized that, then I realized, oh, wow, okay, so maybe this is the step that I need to take in my career to fuel who I feel like I'm called to be in this lifetime. On the side, as you can tell, I started a podcast. I've written a book in the past. I have also had a blog in the past, right? There are other things that I have done, but when I take a step back and look at the overarching theme of all those things considered, my passion projects, my purpose projects, if you will, my career, the overarching theme of all of those things is education. And that's what I mean when I say, when I feel like you're on a path and you're in alignment with who you're called to be in this lifetime, burnout kind of fizzles and goes to the wayside. Not to say that you won't get stressed, not to say that things won't happen, things won't come up, not to say that you won't have curveballs, but I think that when you're going against the grain to do the things that people are telling you that you need to do, what tends to happen is you burn out because you're not in direct alignment with who God is calling you to be. I'm going to let that sit for a little bit. So I feel like once you tap into burnout, in the sense that you realize that you're in that season or you realize that you're in that space for that moment, burnout usually, at least from my understanding, it shouldn't last your entire lifetime. If it lasts your entire lifetime, you're doing something wrong. Something's not right. I'm just be honest. If you are experiencing burnout at a high level, I think that it's time to take a step back and figure out what changed, what happened, what season are you in? Is there something that is going on and that's based on that time that's a little different from how you used to do things? And now you're realizing that, okay, this is running me into the grounds. Now I'm in survival mode. Something's not right. That means to me that something needs to change. That means you have to take a step back and assess the situation to see what's really going on, what's going on behind the scenes. And I always say this, and I've said this in a couple other episodes, paying attention to your body is so crucial, especially as you get older. Mid 20s, I think, I was working, I was getting paid. I was like, okay, oh my gosh, now I have my car. I can go out. I can do what I want with my friends. This is amazing. I feel like, especially summer times, for a good couple of years, I felt like I was never home. I was always out. I told you, I'm not an outside queen, but I was always out. Any opportunity, all right, cool beans, no problem. Yeah, I'll drive. Okay, cool. But I think the older I got into my late 20s, especially as I entered into my 30s, I paid attention more to my body. And if my body was saying no to something, I listened to that. And it's not just, I know some people will say, like, oh, but you're always at home, or you're a homebody, or this and that. Sometimes, though, taking a step back to think about why it is that you feel the way you feel also plays a huge part in overcoming burnout. I got to the point where I was like, yeah, no. If, like today, for example, I knew again that my monthlies were upon me. And I was like, you know what? I need to go home. I had an appointment. I had an errand. I went out. Once I got done, I got food. I came home. And I paid attention to my body, and knowing that if I had pushed myself to go out, run errands, and do all the things that, in my mind I wanted to do, I knew that I would have gotten annoyed, upset with the general public. I would have been annoyed with myself for pushing myself to do the things that I didn't want to do or did want to do, but my body's telling me no at this point in time. And I was like, you know what, Ash? You needed to rest, though. You had a very long week, a very stressful week. Sometimes it's okay to stay home. And I think that when we start to push ourselves to the limit, when we start to push ourselves to the max, oh, no, you got to do this, and you got to do this, and you got to do this. And sometimes, again, it in the moment may seem like a good option. Maybe it's you're picking up another shift from work. Maybe you're working extended hours because you want to meet a certain quota. Maybe you want to hit X amount of clients, and you're pushing yourself to do that because you're going for a bonus. I don't know, whatever it is. But sometimes, again, when you're out of alignment with who you are, what you're meant to be doing, sometimes the extra things that you take on aren't necessarily beneficial to you. Sometimes it runs you into the ground more than anything. And if you're not privy to what your body's telling you, what you're feeling, if you're not privy to just taking a step back and looking at things for what they are and how they make you feel and how they show up and how they present, I do think that burnout is a result of those things. I do think that the outcome is not necessarily beneficial at the end of the day because, again, you're not in alignment with what you're supposed to be doing. So it may look like a good idea, it may seem like a good idea, but then you come home and you're tired, you're annoyed, you're stressed out, you're crying. That's burnout. Something not right. Something is not right. You have to step back and assess the situation for what it is and make changes based off of that. So I'm going to leave that there. Paying attention to your body is 100% important as it relates to burnout. For me, again, it's taking a step back, looking at what about the situation I can change. I can change. And that is also very key. Sometimes we get in spaces, sometimes we get worked up about things, and we complain about the entire system of the thing, whatever that is, without taking into consideration what we're responsible for. If I know that I go to work 3, 4, 5 days for the week and I'm stressed out, now it's taking a step back to look at me, what are the systems in place? As much as I don't think burnout is just some phenomenon or concept that happens because everything goes wrong. That's not what burnout is. I think that burnout is in direct relationship with things that we do, our habits, again, our actions, our environment, all those things. And when we're not in alignment, right, it presents itself. If I know that I go to work and every day I go to work, I'm stressed out, I'm tired, I'm yawning, oh my God, I'm so tired, and this and the third thing, now I need to look at my systems. And I'm not going to speak on parents because I don't have kids. But for me, I got to a point where I was like, all right, so you get to work, you're tired. All right, cool beans. Why are you tired? What time did you go to bed last night? You went to bed at 12 o'clock. You had to wake up at 5. That's only 5 hours of sleep. Clearly, 5 hours of sleep is not working for you, sis. Something got to change. When I get to work, I'm also assessing the situation from the standpoint of, are the things that I put in place, are the systems and the processes that are put in place, are they working for me? Because if I'm working 8 to 10 hour days, 12-hour days every day, and somehow I feel burnt out at the end of every day, that means that something is not right. That then means to me that the processes, again, are out of place. Right? So burnout isn't always like, oh my God, I'm so burned out, my job, my this, that, and the third thing. Sometimes it just means your processes are not in sync with the you, the it, the thing, the job that you're in. The processes are out of alignment. The processes aren't in place. I know that I have been out of sync at different times in my life because I know that I needed 8 hours and I only got 4 to 5. And then I'm tired and then I work long hours and then I come home and I repeat the same cycle. And I've had to stop and had that talk to myself. Like, all right, babes, this clearly isn't working. What are we going to change? What can we change? What can we do better? And it makes a difference. I'm telling you, I got to the point where I was burning myself out and not realizing it because I was working. I was also involved in this network marketing business. I was pushing myself to do this thing that I didn't want to do, while knowing in the back of my head, knowing in the depths of my heart that my passions weren't in direct alignment. And so I was going to work, to be honest, looking hit, like hit. During COVID, nobody really cared. We were just in the trenches doing what we had to do. Like we just showed up and we did what we had to do. We went home. But it got to the point where even when the pandemic was tapering down, I almost didn't care what I looked like with relation to work specifically. I didn't care. And I don't know what happened one day, and I was driving to get my nails done, and I remember it was almost like just this wave of overwhelm in some sense, to the point where I had to stop. I literally had to pull over to the side of the road. I had a thought about something and I just started praying. Couldn't tell you what happened. Nothing happened. It was just this wave of emotions that came over me. And when I got to the parking lot of my nail salon, I started crying. And I don't know what it was. To this day, this happened easily 5 years ago. I still don't know what happened, but I just felt like, oh my gosh. It was almost like I had blinders on and they had finally been lifted up. The shades had finally been lifted and I could see again. And I almost felt like, oh my goodness, like I've just been going around in circles. I'm in survival mode. I'm not operating in the way that I want to. And it took for that to happen for me to realize, like, Ash, when you get your nails done, go home, wash your hair, comb it, so you can look and feel like a person again. And again, I keep saying this, but I'm no psychiatrist, psychologist. I don't know all the signs and symptoms of depression. I don't know if I was just depressed. I don't know what I was. But I remember that day very clearly. And I just got to a point where I knew that I had a decision to make, because the network marketing business that I was a part of wasn't serving me. Like, it wasn't doing anything for me, to be really honest. And once I realized, like, you don't need to start a business. You don't need to do this extravagant thing to say you did it. No. Once COVID hit, the world got quiet, I started my blog. And it was almost like it was my shining moment. It was that moment for me to just step out on faith, step out on, just everything that I knew I had in me, but step out, show the world that I possess the ability to do so. And not in a boastful way, just in a way that said, this is what you're supposed to be doing. This feels right. This moment feels good. I can tell you that, listen, my job right now, I know things are about to kick it up a notch and the ante is going to be upped. And I kept saying to myself, Ash, start the podcast, start the podcast, start the podcast. It's going to get busy. It's going to get busy when September hits. Oh my gosh. And I was like, you know what though? But this actually feels good. This feels, again, like I'm in direct alignment with where I'm supposed to be. And it doesn't feel like a chore. It doesn't feel like a bother. It doesn't feel like a task. Sometimes, yes, I feel like I'm running out of time and I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to record and I need to do these things. But it doesn't feel, when you start to feel like things are a chore, they're a bother, they're another thing to add to the list, to me, that's when you get to the point of burnout. That's when you're getting to that point of that hamster wheel feeling. And I've been there a couple times where it's just like you're going in a cycle, you're going in circles, you're doing it again, like something's got to change. And I think, again, that when we listen to our bodies, when you listen to what's around you, when you start to listen to and see the signs for what they are, it makes a difference. It makes a difference in how you show up. Once you've identified those things, once you've given yourself the space and the grace and the time to figure it out, to work on it, to make changes, to make those plans. As I said, sometimes you got to pivot. Sometimes you just have to act on the things that are in your head. Sometimes you got to act on the things that are in your heart and just come up with a pivot plan. Maybe you thought plan A was the best plan because it had the most money and because you felt like, you would have been recognized for all the things. But maybe plan A just meant that you weren't going to have time for yourself in the process. Maybe plan B offers you less money, but you get that time back to yourself. You get the time back to explore your passions and your purpose, and you get to sit and chill with your family a little bit more. Right? So, again, for me, burnout is one of the roots of all evil, but it is one of the ways that you can know that you're out of direct alignment with who you're called to be in this lifetime. And I honestly believe that when you choose to break up with burnout, when you choose to break up with cycles and paths that are not feeding you, that don't make you feel fulfilled, that make you question what life is. Why am I doing this? Why does this feel this way? I don't understand. This is not fun anymore. When you get to that point, I think it's time to take a step back, time to assess the situation, see what's going on, see what changed. Your life may have changed. Things may have changed in, your circles. And maybe it just means that, all right, my circle has changed. Now it's time for me to shift a little bit different. So take that step back. I urge you to think about if you've ever experienced burnout. Maybe you're not there right this minute. But if you've ever experienced burnout, I urge you to think about what happened during that time, what was happening during that time, what changed, how you could have handled it differently, what you could have changed to get you to the next step, to get you to the next point, to get you on the other side. Some steps I think you can take if you are experiencing burnout, if you feel like you are just on this hamster wheel of life and you're just in a cycle, you're in survival mode and you can't figure out how to get out of it, take a couple minutes. Truly is all you need. Take a couple minutes. I'm a writer. I like to write. I like to journal. I like to jot things down. And just list out, what am I feeling right now? What is my body feeling? What does it feel like when these things happen? when I think I'm going through burnout, and when I know I'm going through burnout, what is that direct relation to what's happening? Is it work? Is it the type of work you're doing? Is it the position you're in? If it's school, is this actually the thing that you want to do, or is this a knowledge that you want to acquire? If not, maybe you need to change tracks. If it is a relationship, is this person meant for me? Because if you feel burnt out after being with somebody, or if you're in relation with somebody and you're constantly just feeling like you're on E, maybe that's not the person for you. I'm not a relationship counselor, so please don't tell the people I told you to break up with them. However, think on these things, because these are real. Listen, your body keeps score, and your body will tell you exactly when something is wrong. And it doesn't always, it's not always a physiological, like you're having palpitations. No, but when you're with that person, when you're in that environment, your body starts to heat up just a little bit. That's a telltale sign. When your heart starts racing, telltale sign. And I know because it's happened to me over the years, and I've paid attention to my body, and I've noticed a difference. When I change my environment, when I change spaces, I'm not around those people anymore. I don't, you lose the number, you delete the contact, things like that. You notice how your body shifts. You notice how you feel a little bit more cool. You're like, wow, oh, I feel good today. Okay. So pay attention to your body. Your body keeps score. List those things that make you feel like you're on E, and think about the things that you think would bring you a little bit more joy, a little bit more fulfillment, a little bit less stress, and figure out ways to get there. As I said, sometimes you got to come up with a pivot plan. If it's a job, you might want to, switch routes for a little bit and figure out the ways to get there. Ask around, talk to people. That's something that, I'm learning to do, and I've always known, but I'm getting more comfortable with talking to people. How did you do this? How did you get here? But how did you? Okay. There are creative ways to get things done. There are ways to do things. You do something on the side until it becomes your main, or you do both things at the same time. There are creative ways to do things to make life meaningful and to be fulfilled in this lifetime. So, again, think on these things. I'm urging you to break up with burnout. I don't think anybody deserves to live in a space of burnout, especially not in survival mode, not their forever thing, because it will burn you out. And I don't think that's the life that God wants for us. I truly believe that, like, God wants us to live a life of fulfillment. I believe that He wants us to live a life of purpose. And I truly believe that He wants us to be passionate about this thing called life, even when the curveballs come, even when, it's a little bit hot on that day and you don't feel like your best self. I truly believe that God put us on this earth to do great things, and you cannot operate in greatness and from a space of greatness if you're experiencing burnout. Please, please, please share this episode with a friend. Don't hesitate to reach out. Connect with me on Instagram at InfoBloomPod. You can also reach out to me at Gmail if you're interested in becoming a guest on this podcast. If you have questions, suggestions, concerns, you can reach out to me at infobloomthepod@gmail.com. And I really, really, really hope that this episode resonated with you. And I hope to have you join in on the next one. Thank you for listening. Bye.